you, Mr. Chairman. And it's also, I would echo that it's nice to see Mr. Matheson, who's always our coach when I was a freshman about how to behave out here and not to take dumb votes. But I appreciate seeing you again, Jim. I would ask a question for Ms. Palmer. In September 2008, Governor Brown, then the Governor of California, signed SB 100 in my home state, which mandates the state to achieve 100% carbon neutrality by 2045. And we're advancing toward that goal, as far as I understand. Why is that approach not the right approach, or is it the right approach at the federal level?
So, thank you, Congressman, for your question. So, in one of the features of SB 100 is, while there's specificity about the renewables goal in the interim years, there's a declared goal for 2045, but the mechanism by which you're going to get to that goal and the technologies that are going to count is sort of unfolding. And I think the types of bills that we're talking about here today are examples of things that could be used to reach that goal. For example, a clean energy standard would be kind of in the spirit of SB 100 because it's open to allowing various technologies and getting the full fleet of options out there through a crediting mechanism. And so there's a lot of similarities between policies that might emerge under that type of policy and the policies that we've been talking about here.
I assume that a pricing strategy for carbon would be one of the tools you'd use to reach that goal as well.
Yes, so one could directly price carbon, as I mentioned in my testimony, or use a crediting program that credits clean energy relative to some emission rate standard. And depending upon how those policies are designed, they can be very similar in outcomes and levels of efficiency, as work at Resources for the Future has shown.
Right, we appreciate your work. I'd ask a question to Mr. Izzo or Mr. Dennis about other baseload clean technologies. We're creating energy resources using technologies like battery storage and smart grids. But what percentage of a carbon-free portfolio do you think we can create across the nation with new carbon-free baseload technologies, including hydro, smart modular reactors, and what would Congress be most useful? What would be most useful thing for us to be doing in terms of affecting that? Mr. Izzo?
Yes, so we've pledged that we believe we can get to 100% carbon-free by 2050 through some combination of public policy changes and technology developments. The technology developments that we would anticipate would be needed, you mentioned two of them. There would be improvements in battery storage technology and advanced nuclear fuel cycles.
Okay. Mr. Dennis?
Like others on this panel, we support a technology-neutral approach that allows all technologies to compete in the market. And so what percentages within the baseload definition that Mr. Mathis gave you or in some other definition is really, it's how do all of these technologies work together? The technologies you mentioned, modular nuclear reactors, battery storage in particular, how do they work together to maintain moment-to-moment balance and reliability on the system? It will be a variety and a portfolio of technologies, all operating within that goal that this committee has of a net zero carbon emissions by 2050.
So one of the technology neutral strategies that we've heard about to push these developments, incentivize developments, is carbon pricing. Other than either a cap and trade or a carbon fee, do you see something that the federal government should be doing to generate that innovation, Mr. Dennis?
I think I agree with the thrust of Ms. Palmer's testimony in the sense that there are a number of options that this committee should consider. It should really take a holistic approach. As I mentioned in my testimony, we support the policy objective of net zero carbon emissions by 2050 and carbon pricing and clean energy standards. Those are all potential options that should be studied. There's probably no one silver bullet here. They're all going to work in different ways. And so considering all of those options together, take a look at what the states are doing as well. The states have pursued a number of different objectives, your states and others, that can all be looked at and considered by this committee.
Since you're here, and I'll push you a little bit more because we're the ones that are supposed to study it, and I think this is the classroom here a little bit. Are there particular states you think are doing a better job than others?
That's a hard question to answer because we have a number of states we're working in, and I don't want to choose among our children that have done well in moving toward 100% clean energy grid. But certainly, some of the examples are obviously your state of California and setting the objectives, and as Ms. Palmer talked about, working through those policy objectives. We've recently seen Colorado move toward 100% clean energy as well in its legislation. So there are a variety of approaches.
All right. My time's expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.